Hello, guys, and welcome back to the next episode of the Red Pony podcast. Today, my name is Josh. I'm joined with Pete, and we are going to be discussing the topic of social multiplayer horrors. And we're going to be talking about games similar to Friday the 13th, Dead by Daylight, and other more, not quite the same, but games similar like Phasmophobia, The Forest even, Hunt Showdown. We're going to try to talk and bring all these concepts of these games together in the context of the new Evil Dead game that is coming out. So Pete and I are going to try to pitch some thoughts of what we want to see in this game, taking concepts from games we've played. So, Pete, how are you doing today?
Very well, mate. How about you?
We've tried to record this 3 times now, so I'm hoping this is the last. We're having some internet issues. Pete, where do you suggest we start on this episode?
I think we should first start by explaining what we mean when we say social horror. Because I think for this episode to make any sense, people should understand the genre we're kind of tackling. So yeah.
So let's try to define this then.
Yeah. So for me personally, social horror games are based around creating almost curated classic horror events from movies. But you do that just organically by cooperating with your friends, or by using competition. So the best example I have for this is Friday the 13th. In that game, you have certain objectives that you need to carry out, and it's just a group of friends versus Freddy. Jason, sorry, not Freddy, versus Jason. And Jason is also played by a human being as well. And basically, collectively, you create movie-like events to happen. And I think that's what it is ultimately. It's socializing around the campfire in the context of a horror game where you're constantly in danger and you have objectives to carry out during it. So that's the way I see it.
I like the campfire bit. That was quite nice. So for me, my definition is a little different. It's you've definitely got the duality between an AI, sorry, not an AI, a human-controlled player who plays as the villain, and then you have that contrasted with the humans, the good guys. Doesn't always have to be the case. That's where maybe we'd differ. I would say games that simply have an AI-controlled villain that obviously resembles the horror aspect of the game can provide that social multiplayer game. The important thing for me in my definition is that you simply have at least more than 2 people on the same team in a horror setting whereby you really do have to cooperate to succeed.
Yeah, I agree that cooperation is the core part of this genre, for sure.
Okay. So I think, therefore, out of the games that we might be thinking of, that doesn't really kind of limit anything, so we can still kind of talk about everything. But when we mention, I do see the clear distinction between games like Evil Dead, in this, which is coming out, Dead by Daylight, Friday the 13th, and then other games like Hunt Showdown or Phasmophobia. Yeah. They are distinctly different. For example, I think, just because you have AI in some aspects, at least with Phas and with Hunt Showdown.
Hunt is like a battle royale style extraction game. It has horror elements, but ultimately it's based around competition, very little cooperation. There is cooperation, but the point is ultimately the really tense extraction shooter thing going on. That's why I wouldn't really put Hunt in this.
What's interesting though is you can still play these games that really you should cooperate more. You can still play them without cooperation. Now, I would definitely say they're probably less fun, especially Dead by Daylight, for example. I've played that solo with.
I don't think they're playable solo. I just think it's a bad experience. The reason why is because they are clearly designed to be played cooperatively as a group, and there was no thought in the developer's mind to optimize it for somebody who might want to play solo. You can kind of make it work just by brute force, but it is fundamentally not designed to be played like that. So that's my opinion.
All right then. So how about now you and I try to talk about some of the games more exclusively in this narrower definition, So let's talk about Dead by Daylight. Let's talk about Friday the 13th. Let's talk about the parts of the game that made it special.
Yes. Yes.
So I'll crack us off straight away with Dead by Daylight, as I've played that and have the most experience with that. For me, Dead by Daylight set the ground on the villain and the creativity that was put forward and just the various guys you could play as. It wasn't something that we hadn't seen before, of course. You can go back to Valve of Left 4 Dead 2, for example. But in the context of a claustrophobic environment, where it's, again, about this really serious cooperation and the one guy who's alone. Again, maybe we've had this before. I think Evolve tried to do it, but it was a bit on a larger scale. I'm trying to think of other things that are similar to it, but really,
I don't think anything was quite like Dead by Daylight in what it set out.
It was. I think it was more like really enforced to the point where it's like this is the bare bones of it. It is 4v1, and we're setting you up with some. The survivors have barely any classes, barely any surviving techniques. It's all about that cooperation.
Yeah.
And then even your monster, it doesn't. It's not the most overpowered thing in the world as well. To some extent, I mean, you can kind of literally hook anyone you want, and it's ridiculously annoying. So
yeah, but sorry to interrupt, but if I remember correctly from Dead by Daylight, at the beginning when you showed it to me, I was like, well, you can just keep on hooking people, and that's BS. But as you play the game more, I feel like the difficulty is definitely skewed in the survivor's favor. Like like
I think you're right.
You have to be like a master 300 IQ player to be a good monster in Dead by Daylight.
Yeah, I think this should be a theme that we discuss throughout, because I'd be curious, as I haven't unfortunately played Friday the 13th that much. I'd be curious to know if it's the same skewed towards the survivors being more powerful. I've got a feeling it's not.
Quite the opposite. See, at least it was on launch, but yeah.
See, the thing is, from the perspective of Dead by Daylight, it definitely diminishes some of the horror if you're not at such a disadvantage. Or sorry, if you at least aren't, if you're more powerful to some extent than the monster. Yeah. Do you remember a game we also played quite recently? It's kind of also has this dynamic. I think it's called In Silence.
Yeah.
We didn't really love it.
In Silence is absolutely fits within this genre.
Yeah.
The issue is that go ahead.
What's the issue with it's no. Can you go? I think you put it perfectly. Now that I remember what you said, go on. I remember what you said before.
I can't remember what I said, so I'll leave that to you. But
you just said it was boring. I think something like
Silence is just it's a bad game in my opinion. Unfortunately, it's very cheap and it has potential, but in its current state, it felt really unfinished. It felt aimless and repetitive and a bit mind-numbing, quite frankly. It was not scary. It was just really unenjoyable to play through.
For context, you play as the monster, a blinded monster, and you sense through sound. So it does employ the survivors to use stealth to be able to try to complete the objectives, which, if I remember correctly, your objectives were to scavenge around the map to try to find some specific objects for a car to get out. But they were extremely hard to find. The map was huge. It was no joy to play as the survivor, even though, to be honest, you wanted to play as the monster, even though it was a very imbalanced thing as well going on there. You couldn't really even run. You could, but the monster would get markers on a UI to see where you are. By the way, going off on a tangent, I was talking about Dead by Daylight, but the point I was making is just, first and foremost, you need to have a nice balance between the survivors and the monster. That seems to be something I found really enjoyable in Dead by Daylight, at least when I first started playing it. I was like, this seems quite fair, actually. What would you like to add to that about Dead by Daylight?
In what regard?
In any regard of what you find to be good about the game, actually.
Oh, okay. My favorite part of it is just how the concept. It's so fun to have like a group of classic slashers and horror film monsters and put them in the context of some creative maps and just unleash you into the sandbox. I just think at the time there was nothing else like it out there. I still think there is ultimately not much like it out there. My issue with Dead by Daylight now is that it kind of went heavily into partnerships, and it. I feel like there was a point where they clearly decided that they're gonna make money and that they won't put as much effort into actually making it a good
Right.
game, and
Yeah.
that was the unfortunate part. Uh, yeah, both. That's the thing. Both of these games, Dead by Daylight and Friday the 13th, die. Oh, Dead by Daylight is still around, but not many people play it, and I feel like it happened for really stupid reasons because they both are really great games that would have been nice to still have around.
I know Friday the 13th has a separate reason, but
Yeah.
I think Dead by Daylight really was a victim of its own business model in some
Yes.
sense because it just decided to use micro transactions to ask you to purchase extra characters, things that are very anti-consumer, even though the game in itself is still kind of linear and small in its
Yeah.
scope, so you don't really feel like it's warranted.
It got heavy into monetization, and it did it in a way which made the game feel like a mobile game. That's in my mind now. It is a mobile game,
Mm-hmm.
and that sucks for a game which has such a good foundation. You know, like I understand if you wanna people want more monsters and maps. Of course, you're gonna need a paid DLC eventually because that's just how it is. But they didn't make it so you have one big conceptual paid DLC. You know, which
Sure.
has like a lot of meat and potatoes in it. They did it in this mobile gamey way where the monetization was all screwed, and you got like you got little characters for like a nominal fee, and then if you wanted to get other stuff for it, you had to pay separately, and
It was
yeah,
so enraging. Yeah.
yeah,
I actually think it's worth us doing this rather than just talking about what we love and then later what we don't like. Just take down each IP once at a time. So Dead
sure.
by Daylight, we've kind of already gone through it a lot, but I really didn't quite find the generators and the hooks to be 100% there. I thought they could have been a bit more flushed out. Some different, for example, the hooks could be different for each particular monster. So why does every monster have to hook you? It gets a
Fuck
little,
you. That was
you know,
also an annoying part, is because it was supposed to feel different each time, but it felt the same. They should have changed not only what the objective based around what map you're on, but maybe also based around the monster. You know, I would be fine if there would be less monsters in the game, but each of them distinctly changed
yes.
each match
Yeah.
than what we have now. So yeah,
Yeah, like there's a character in the game that has like a chainsaw, and I think it would be really appropriate if he dragged you off to like a shed, and he would shut the door, and you'd be locked in there, and maybe the
yeah.
shed would shake in some sort of Evil Dead
Or
fashion.
you could
You
have
know?
like some kind of limb mechanic where it cuts off one of your limbs, like
Oh yeah,
every
yeah,
one of your,
sure.
and you have to play the match without one arm or something. It's just anything would be cool.
Like there's a phantasm character or something, and maybe he transports you into like a shadow realm of sorts, and you have to try to get out. Or you
Yeah,
know you're trying to signal you're in a maze. You know you could be very creative with these things.
yeah. Like with Freddy, he could pull you into his dream world, and you
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
escape, in order to snap out of it, or your friends can come wake you up or something like that.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah,
I would also argue that you don't really need to be too you don't need to put too much thought into it. Really, all you're doing is symbolizing an incapacitated moment for
yeah,
the survivor.
exactly. Yeah,
So you could
precisely.
do a lot of things with that, right?
Mhm.
So aside from those things, it was just about I feel like this is a typical criticism of these games is it does get boring after a little while because there's one game mode typically and there's only a set like the amount of new experiences.
Sure.
So that's Dead by Daylight for me. But apart from that, I fucking loved that game. It was good fun.
Hey, I'm gonna be back, everyone. I need to turn on some lights because I look like
All
emo as
right.
fuck right now.
Well,
One
while you're
sec.
doing that, it's okay. We'll keep cracking on. So I think for the next game that we should definitely go into further detail about will be Friday the 13th. And I just want to give a little disclaimer that I haven't had the opportunity to play this game that often. Now, I'm a huge fan of the movies as well. And I'd be curious to hear when Pete gets back a little bit about this game. I'd like to first of all know what makes this distinctly different from Dead by Daylight and what things would he want in from this game to be in the Evil Dead game that's coming out soon. So now that Pete is returning to his seat, I'll ask both of those questions. Pete, welcome back. First question. I'll let you get some earphones on first. Hey, I kept going all the way through that. I thought, why not? Why waste any of our good
Yeah,
people's time?
where'd you leave off?
So I was just saying to the guys that Friday the 13th is something I haven't played. So I need
Mhm.
your help here. Let's move on to
Okay.
that. I want to hear from you what you think
Yeah,
first of all, makes this game very good and distinct from Dead by Daylight?
yeah. So first and foremost, I have to say, Evil Dead is like a spiritual successor to Friday the 13th. I guarantee it's going to play very similarly. So there, yeah.
Sure.
So I think this is the most important one. But yeah, so what the reason I used to play it quite a bit and I really enjoyed it. The reason why it died is actually not because of anything bad or like a bad player base. It was because of some legal issue where apparently they somehow bought the rights only to using the name but not the IP. I don't know how that happens, but basically, whoever owns the IP just sent them a cease and desist and said, stop. And they had to. And that's really sad, but yeah. So, what is Friday the 13th? It is, as I said, a game which is intrinsically about cultivating, like I said, classic horror movie moments that are cinematic, but in an emergent way with your friends. So, it's not scripted. You don't stumble into scripted moments. You can like organically create them yourselves. And the way it does that is just by placing you in a perfect sandbox. It's atmospheric, there's different maps, it's creepy, and there's really great visual cues for different things you can do. And it basically takes advantage of its map and its visual language so that it's very intuitive to achieve these types of moments. And cooperation is essential to this game because the difference to Dead by Daylight is that so as I said, Freddy is OP. Why do I keep on saying Freddy? God damn it. Jason is OP in this game. So the monster is technically has the advantage. And the reason why it's I think in particularly more difficult than in Dead by Daylight is that yeah, in Dead by Daylight you have to cooperate, but the form of cooperation is ultimately quite simple. And even people who don't have maybe you can cooperate in that game without even using a mic. Like you can kind of figure it out. The game is designed so it's more easy in that way. In Friday the 13th, if you want to beat Jason and escape, you really have to cooperate to the full extent of your abilities. You have to talk constantly. You have to coordinate where you are on the map, those kind of things. And so one thing which is really great about this game is that you have different objectives that you need to do. And not only different objectives, they can change based on the game, but also there are different ways to escape, and you can kind of choose yourself. And basically, you have no form of long-term communication unless you find a walkie-talkie, and your friend does as well. And then you can kind of talk and like, what did you find? Oh, I found the keys for the boat. But I found the gas can for the car. And then you can kind of decide, okay, we're going to look for this, we're going to look for that. And all the while, whilst you're trying to find this and going through, like, in my opinion, a really nice looking and creepy map, you have this Jason coming after you, and his arsenal is monstrous. That's one of my favorite things, is that his toolkit is truly unique and expansive. And it can result in a lot of really cool, creepy things. He can teleport in front of you if he wants. And my favorite part is that you can create like these really tense chase scenes where you can like move like a locker in front of the door to bar it, or you can even trick him by using audio cues. And yeah, that's why I think it's a really special game, and I'm happy that Evil Dead will continue this type of thing because it's really unique.
That sounds pretty sick. You kind of sold the game to me, and I haven't even played it before. So really, so very, very exciting stuff. I have to ask you two questions. First, is there like a ping system in this game? Is there
Yeah.
anything to assist? So there is something to assist if you don't have microphones.
Yes, but it's really designed to be played with.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was going to be my next little add-on to your point. Is just after recently we played Phasmophobia in the last, say, year or two,
Yes.
I've really, really felt the inclusion of in-game walkie-talkies to be so impactful. And also
Yeah.
where you have, therefore, regional voice communication, so you can hear people less loudly in-game based on where they are in the vicinity to you. I think that adds a lot. That adds so much.
Yeah.
And that should always be in these kinds of games because it adds
Yeah.
so much. Because it kind of just puts you more into the map more. And you take
Yeah,
more...
it
just
increases
adds that.
immersion.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Okay, so with Friday the 13th, how exactly do you defeat the main... How do you defeat Jason?
Right. So here's the thing. You can't defeat Jason. Kind of. You can't really defeat him. The point of the game is that you have to escape, pretty much. And the way you do that is you can try to do it by yourself or cooperate. You're not going to get far by yourself. You're going to die. So that's why I said it intrinsically forces cooperation. There is one way to kill Jason, but you have to do a very specific set of actions consecutively. Basically, I can't remember everything, but I know that one of your friends has to die, and then you can go to a radio tower and call in this guy from the movies who hunts Jason, and he has to come in, and then you have to find the weapon and some effigy, and you have to perform like a little ritual to kill him.
Right.
It's quite difficult to do, but very rewarding.
That's
Yeah.
quite cool. That you have like multiple options though. There's ways that you
Yes.
can escape. There's ways that you can injure slash kill. There's it.
You can also just stun lock him if you
Hmm,
have enough items. But yeah,
yeah, that's quite interesting. Okay. What do you think? You kind of started to talk about this, but just to put it into really clear points, what do you think will be included in Evil Dead from Friday the 13th?
everything. It looks exactly the same. It looks like Friday the 13th, but more. Like as you saw, you can do like this cool thing in Evil Dead where you can spawn in the car and appear in like the rear view mirror to creep people out. It's gonna have like a much more playful and fun tone to it.
Okay.
And I feel like Evil Dead is going to it's just going to have a bigger toolkit for everyone. You're going to be able to do a lot more cool shit in it, which is good because, as I said, what I think makes these games special is curating and creating movie-like moments with your friends. And you're going to be able to do a lot of that based on the trailer in Evil Dead. Now, they could have just made a really good trailer, but the game is
Yeah.
actually not that good. You don't know, but the trailer looks perfect. And if the game comes out like that, I recommend everybody try it out because you will enjoy it. Um, yeah,
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. Back to the overarching topic that we're talking about today, which is about the idea of the online multiplayer horror game. Now, do
specifically
you
social. But,
social? Yeah, sure.
mm,
That's our definition that we've adopted since the start. Social online multiplayer horror games. Now, I wanted to quickly go over just one question. Is there any other games that are out at this point that kind of fill into that definition besides
you,
the ones we mentioned?
you mentioned Phasmophobia, so Phasmophobia I feel like fits as well.
I wouldn't agree that Phasmophobia fits in this definition that well because it doesn't involve a human player, to play the counterpart.
Yeah,
But
sure. Yeah,
they
but
are distinctly different. Like the general emotion
you're
that
right.
sits with you, it's different when you play this game.
You are right.
Um,
Yeah.
However, that being said, I think we had this discussion last night. In fact, we discussed about this new game coming out called Midnight Ghost Hunt.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I thought it was just worth bringing up.
Yeah.
Now it kind of is borrowing a lot of ideas from other games, but in a very nice way. It looks like quite a novel game involving like prop hunt, ideas of Ghostbusters. Perhaps we can demonstrate what you'd expect on the screen at this point, but I'd be curious to have a quick chat with you, Pete, about what you think this game is going to be like.
Yeah.
It's out really soon, isn't it? Like
In 2 days actually.
2 days, right?
Yeah. I hadn't heard a thing about it until you told me, and I think that's bad because the game looks very good, and I don't know why it's not getting more recognition or like hype, but it looks cool. It looks like it wears its inspirations on its sleeve. It's clearly Ghostbusters inspired in terms of its theme, very much so. But in terms of the gameplay, it has basically three distinct, clear sections to it. So the first section I would describe to be something like Killing Floor, GTFO, even Rainbow Six Siege, where you have a preparation phase where you have to set everything up, and get ready, and kind of think tactically about how the enemy will try to use the map against you, and but just basically just prepare for the assault.
It's just one thing that you may have forgot is that it is split into two teams. One being the survivors, the Ghostbusters,
The Ghostbusters
and team
and the
two
ghosts.
are the ghosts. Yeah,
Yeah,
just want to say.
and one cool thing about the ghosts is that in section 2 of the game, which is the main part, the inspiration to me seems like prop hunt. You remember Gary's mod prop hunt?
Of course,
Yeah,
fantastic.
because
You know,
the ghosts can kind of conceal themselves as items and kind of sneak around and take advantage of the environment, which I think is really cool. And the enemy team has to find them using their tools and kill them. It will extract, assimilate them or whatever. Yeah.
yeah.
And I forgot. What is the third part of the game?
The third part, it's essentially they have till midnight, to try to find these ghosts that are hiding as props. And if they fail to find them, then boom, the clock strikes, and then the ghosts are hunting the ghost hunters. You play as a passive ghost in this game, which is interesting. Only with some
Right.
limited powers. They have kind of shown off a few of the classes, I think. So you have some traps you can use, and maybe some weapons in the environment to kill the Ghostbusters, but it's unlikely. Really, what you're doing is hiding and trying to run away if they find you. For example, you can turn into a ball and just start rolling around. It's kind of cool. And then at the end, like I said, so they switch, and then the ghosts are suddenly these revenants, and then they're going to be chasing the ghost hunters and try to kill them. And it looks like the odds are so far stacked in the favor of the ghosts at that point that it's going to be really hard. So you really do want to find them.
So this is like similar to Friday the 13th in that sense, in that the monsters do become really OP, and it requires cooperation to beat them.
Right.
But I think the design choice in that is you really should, as the ghost hunters, you should really strive to not get there. You need to take out the ghosts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's a kind of a way to keep the game going. So don't fuck around. But from what I've heard, the odds are stacked just a little bit too much in the ghost's favor in that third round.
That's how it appears.
So they could balance that though.
Yeah. Just to say, you kind of started off by saying there's this really whole great preparatory stage. And even just before that, you kind of arrive off like a train or on a boat to the particular area as the Ghostbusters. And you do pick a specific class. Now, obviously, I'm not quite sure and aware of what these would contain, but it seems like you can have certain weapons. There's a whole thing about it. And with the Ghost specifically, you will have some unique things you can do as the Ghost as well. So it does look quite cool. There's a lot to experience and a lot to go through with all these new things.
Yeah. It's like taking Evolve, somehow splicing Prop Hunt into it, and then adopting the asymmetrical gameplay of Rainbow Six Siege, and then slapping Ghostbusters onto it.
And kind of Friday the 13th, it seems like a little bit in the air at the end. So that's kind of how we brought it in. But I'm just excited for this one. It looks unique.
Yeah, it looks really good. I'm definitely going to be trying it, I think. So.
But ultimately, even though the theme of this video is the online social horror, this really doesn't seem to be too much of a horror game. It looks a bit more lighthearted.
Yeah. To me, it seems more in the vein of like Deep Rock Galactic. Like, maybe there's like some creepy stuff that is supposed to look creepy, but really it's cartoonish.
Yeah.
So.
But it is a social multiplayer game in some sense, so there is that. But nevertheless, I dare say we move forward. I suppose what we could do now, we're just coming up for half an hour. Should we start talking about some other notable games? I wanted to talk a little bit about Hunt Showdown and a little bit perhaps about The Forest, but it's up to you. What do you think? As footnotes for Evil Dead, but maybe we're at the point now where they won't be truly applicable.
Yeah, like I'm sorry, but I really feel like Hunt Showdown doesn't belong in this.
I'm just a fan.
Just anywhere near this genre, because it's an extraction game. If it's close to anything, it's close to Escape from Tarkov. It's a shooter ultimately. There is.
It's a shooter first and a horror game second.
But it's our fucking podcast. We can talk about whatever we want. So let's talk about Hunt, because I love Hunt, and I want Hunt to be like. I think Hunt deserves to be the most popular shooter on the market.
Yeah. And I tell you what, I reckon a lot of people don't really understand what the game's about. That's what's sad.
Yeah. So maybe we should try to describe it.
It is like a stylistic... Imagine a battle royale game to an extent where you're placed into this open map and your objective is kind of not exactly the most clearest, but you've got a range of zombies going around in this environment, and you've also got opposing teams of 2, I believe. Is it 2?
Yeah.
You can't have 4. So it's 2. You have a class, you're a soldier, and your job is to try to locate these... I'm trying to think of what they are now, but they give you like a vision, a location, and you need to eventually find it to extract this particular beast and kill him. And once you've killed this beast, then you'll then be sent to another location. You have to hold out there to try to do this ritual of sorts. So you've got like a 3-step process to get to the end. But it's not necessarily that process that makes the game so interesting. It's kind of the fact that you've got you've got to try to stealth your way properly through this map against these enemies, these real players who are also trying to do the same objective. And you've also got to try to find information to then do this, to do the extraction, as well as the holding out, where then once you do the holding out post, so it would typically be in a building somewhere, it will notify every player on the map of that place. So you genuinely need to be, defensed well. You can set up
Yeah.
barricades. You need to have like Molotov cocktails, sniper rifles. You need to be on the go, really.
But the cool part is that somebody could steal your extraction.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Even if you begin it, somebody could steal it from you, especially if you die. So there's actually like a little like sub thing you can do where you actually don't focus on the objective and you just grab information, get in, get out quickly. Because the reason why you might want to do that is because in this game they do an escape from Tarkov thing where if your hunter is like your character and with all his abilities and everything. If your hunter dies, he's dead. He ain't coming back.
Oh
you
yes.
you get put back. Well, you get put back with a schmuck hunter level 1.
Yeah.
And level 1 at the start, but eventually you can upgrade and you can start from higher up and with some pre-added stuff. But generally, yeah, you get sent back a lot if you die. So
I find this kind of system so harsh, but I get the appeal.
But like it really makes you think. That's what I like about this game is because it really adds you into like an oppressive atmosphere, and you feel like you're in a war zone and you have to try to survive. And the choices that you make, you feel like really do impact your survival. And you're not like a god in the game. You're not the chosen one. You really are just somebody else in the melting pot, and you're all in a shitty situation, and you're just trying to survive, and you have to make choices, good choices, to keep on being alive. And I think that's really cool. And yeah, as you said, the asymmetrical little like processed like 3-step process game loop is a compelling one. But by far my favorite thing about this game is the theme, which is like this supernatural Western, dingy New Orleans swamp thing. Like the aesthetic is just really cool and creepy, and beyond that, the sound design. This game is. Do you want to talk about it? Go ahead.
I had to. You brought it up though. I feel like I can't take it away from you. It's by far the best part of the game, in my view. For example, the way you typically experience gunshot sounds in a game, let's say for example in a Battlefield game, would sound pretty realistic to some extent. But in this game, I don't know what kind of technology they used to capture it. I think they fired real guns and they used some 3D modeling. I'm not an expert in sound design at all, but the way that they did it, you can hear gunshots almost exactly where they come from, and it almost describes an accurate distance to you. It's very powerful, and it almost makes you want to be extremely careful in the game because it's a very it does sound too real to my ears, at least in some ways.
Yeah, well, there's an actual menu in the game where you can see all the guns in the game, and then you can select them, and then select from a 0 to like 100 meters or more or something like that. I can't remember the distance, but you can select the specific distance and what gun, and you can listen and train your ear to remember what specific guns and ammunition sound like from any distance. And honestly, if you spend enough time playing this game, you will eventually be like, okay, so this guy is shooting a 50 cal. He's around like 150 meters away from me or something like that. And then you can make choices about, okay, so should I go in that direction? Am I equipped well enough to deal with that situation, or should I go somewhere else? And there's also like this mechanic in the game where, of course, when you move, you make sound and it's loud. Like everything you do makes noise. And you kind of have to play this little game of, okay, I want to stealth now so nobody hears me. But the thing is, if you stealth and walk slowly, you will die.
Yeah, that's true.
So you have to somehow paradoxically move fast, but also silently. And it's just a cocktail of tension, and it's compelling as hell. Yeah.
So to conclude, the reason I wanted to talk about this, Pete, was mainly because it really sucks as a single player game on an online game. It's a game that really does require I wouldn't say social, but the cooperation between two good people, two friends. That's when you'll get the enjoyment and you'll want to play this game. I actually don't think this is a game at all for a person who buys it and plays it solo. Do not even think
Well,
about it, in my
I was
view.
gonna say this is actually something similar it has to the social horror genre. Is that I really don't think the game was designed at all for solo play.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
there's nothing there for you really for solo play. Now, I know like some people who have played this game for a long time who are fucking gods at the game who play solo. But that's only because they're gods at the game. It's because they're so good that they can kind of deal with it. But this game is made to be played cooperatively, and I think cooperation is important. And not only that, it does this thing where I actually think that this is the type of game where you should go on Discord or maybe you're lucky and you have a friend who's already good at it to teach you. I feel like this is a game
Yes.
where it has like this teacher student mechanic where you'll have a much better experience if you have somebody showing you the ropes.
And then
You
in
know?
classic gaming fashion, the student will then outpass and be better than the
Yes, of
master,
course.
and then the master
Sure.
will retire onto the next game.
Yeah.
It's yeah. Okay, Pete, we're approaching 36. I think you and I should summarize Evil Dead now. If you'd like to, if you did want to talk about the forest, I'd say by all means, but I feel like we don't need to. It's up to you.
Yeah. The Forest is also it's a survival based building multiplayer game.
We
It's
have
got some
I
more
can't feel I
elements.
don't feel like I can add anything to it, at least.
Yeah, it's an exploration game, but that's also a really good game in my opinion. Just we can skip
Yeah,
over
yeah.
this, but it's a good game, and I can't wait for Sons of the
It's
Forest, the sequel. That's gonna be
yeah,
good stuff. It was delayed, unfortunately, but I'm still very
that's a
excited.
shame.
Yeah,
The trailer looked truly ambitious compared to the first. So
the trailer almost looks too good to be true. Like it looks like two generations split the
yeah,
two
yeah.
games, right? It looks like two generations passed, but not that much time has passed. So either they were really good at making the trailer look uh, impressive, or it'll be that good. Remains to be seen.
I think it'll probably be that good, to be honest.
Hmm.
Yeah, got my beliefs in it.
Okay, well, we already kind of talked about it early, but let's go into Evil Dead and kind of really
Uh,
seal the deal
I actually
on
had
it.
a suggestion.
Mhm.
Perhaps could you describe what you think should be the conditions that you'd buy this game? And what I mean by that is, if what are your expectations if you're buying the game, and should you play it solo? I kind of know we already covered it, but so
Yeah. This is just a game that if you want to pick up, where you're gonna have a ton of fun cooperating with friends, playing with friends, and it'll be less about the competitive aspect of it and more like based around socializing. It's gonna be about like an escape room or something like that. Where you play with some friends to have fun and maybe have a little bit of tension here and there. And I think that's what the game really is. It's not gonna be like Evolve, where it's gonna be about the competitive aspect. I don't think it's gonna be about being a competitive survivor or monster or anything like that.
yeah. Do you think it's going to completely reinvigorate the genre?
I hope so.
No, do you think it will? Do you we've seen trailers, you kind of got some realistic expectations. I mean, not
Look,
you.
if it's like the trailers, hell yeah. I don't know if it'll be like the trailers. But to me, it looks like Friday the 13th, but better in every way and wackier and more schlockier. That's what it looks like to me. And that's all it needs to be, in my opinion. I think the biggest potential for disappointment with this game is actually not with the concept or the mechanics. I think that'll be solid and super fun. The danger with this game is if that it could be very buggy on release because of the
Yeah.
more indie studio, and you don't want a game like this to be buggy, frankly. And on top of that, the issue that they were running with Friday the 13th is that they were really slow to put content up because they were an indie studio. And a game like this, it's going to be popular for 1 month, and if there is no new content, nobody will talk about it anymore, and it runs the risk of going into obscurity. And
Yeah.
yeah,
That's sad
uh,
as well because we want to see more games like this because it's such a beautiful piece of it's a good genre. It really needs to keep having more development actually.
yeah, and unfortunately, this is, in my experience, not only with the social horror genre, but it's an unfortunate aspect of humanity or gamers, I guess, is that if it doesn't have competitive elements or something which will make you go from that place, there's a niche of people who will just play it for the cooperation and for the experience itself. I feel like a lot of people need a competitive element. which is why these games can die.
Yeah.
Also, however, or you could have a single player mode which can keep you going when maybe your friends aren't around, you know?
Sure, but I mean, my
And
advice would be to play Elden Ring at this point if you're going to play a single player game.
sure, but like it needs to like have longevity, and the way you do that is by keep on adding content. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, but a game like this does have a lot of objectives and maps, so we'll see.
Yeah, my last thought on this was just that from the trailers and information you've described Friday the 13th to be like, and what we expect to this Evil Dead game to be like, it doesn't seem to me that every Dead by Daylight player, and I say this because it was the most mainstream of the social horrors, will instantly find the enjoyment they want in Evil Dead. They may. I think what they should do is do the research, check to make sure that they're comfortable with the changes, and maybe play Friday the 13th first as well. It sounds like if the game's still alive, they should do that
But
anyway.
the game is dead.
I think I should.
You can technically log in, and servers are still up, I think, but nobody's playing it. So unless you have a group of like 6 friends, yeah.
So okay then. So when is Evil Dead releasing, Pete? Do you know?
April something. 1 second.
Okay, that's still good then. So it means we can say
April 19th, I think.
Right.
No, that's when Batman comes out on streaming. Sorry.
Well, it's important to also mention that. Don't also forget Midnight Ghost Hunt releases tomorrow or the day after, 31st. Sorry,
it's coming up May 2013.
May 23rd.
Sorry, I said May 2013. Did I know? I mean May 13th, 2022. That's what I mean.
May 13th. Okay, it's coming out on the 13th as well, which is perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then, so May 13th for Evil Dead, and as well, Midnight Ghost Hunt 31st. 2 things to watch out for. Yep. I think this was quite an interesting chat, actually. It's kind of made me more aware of this genre, and it's kind of makes me want to play more games in this genre, to be honest. Simple as that.
Yeah.
It's something that I want more developers to go into the niche market that is social horror and pump more stuff out. So I hope Evil Dead's good.
I hope so too. It's super fun. I feel like games like this are very different and important because they function fundamentally different to how video gaming naturally works. It feels more like they can replace an escape room. I think is like my best example. So.
Yeah, and also you can also crap your pants a bit as well. For at least the first 5 to 10 games, because it's gonna be terrifying. So
I still remember when I thought Faz was like creepy.
Oh, it was so terrifying when you first played it. It really was.
But that's kind of how everything goes. What you're really afraid of is you don't know what can happen, and when you don't know, fear of the unknown is what's creepy. But once you know how the game works, it just can't be creepy anymore, which is sad.
I was gonna just say, I commend the guy who created Faz. He's put so much updates into the game in the last 6 months at least. He's just done phenomenal work. I hope
incredible work.
I know he made he sold a hell of a lot of copies, so he must be doing well for himself. Well, they must be.
Yeah.
I know he has a small team. So
I can't wait for the next update. The next update apparently will add like hallucinations and new mechanics which amplify the horror. So that'll be cool.
Dope. Okay, all right then, Pete. I think we've concluded our episode for the day, and we'll be back same time when we're next back. More to come.